Hello.
Hey everyone.
Hi.
We're coming at you with a quick and dirty, like totally unedited little pop-in thing here ahead of WoTCon. We're leaving for WoTCon in like 10 minutes, but some news came out this morning about the Screen Actors Guild almost definitely joining the strike. The Writers Guild of America is currently on strike, has been on strike for 70 days, and there's been a lot of chatter, understandably, online, wondering, what does this mean? How does this affect things? Why is this happening? So as two people who are connected to the industry, we thought we'd take a quick moment to share some insights. Disclaimer here, we're not strike captains.
No, but here's the deal. We feel like, despite all of those disclaimers, we have a responsibility to help y'all figure out ways in which you can be supportive and figure out what the heck is going on with this strike. There are many, many people that know way more than we do, but we're going to try to do an explain like I'm five version of what is going on.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not in the industry at all. If anything turns out to be incorrect, it is partially due to the fact that I am, again, not a WGA strike captain. And also, I've been awake for 2 days straight because I can't sleep.
Yeah, because this is kind of, as people who are in the entertainment industry, it's a lot. Allie, again, being a writer and me being an actor.
Yeah, but essentially, we are coming at you kind of representing a little bit to the ways that we can represent them, the WGA and SAG.
Yeah, and again, we're doing this not just randomly, but because a lot of people in the Wheel of Time community are like, what is this? Why is this happening? Does it affect the show? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
The short answer is yes, it does affect the show. But you should not be directing your anger or ire toward SAG or the WGA.
Yeah.
The fault for this rests entirely with an organization called the AMPTP,
which I think is American. What is it?
The producers.
Yeah, it's the producers. Yeah. They host the Oscars.
And the studios and the CEOs that run them.
And the streamers.
Right? So if you're hearing
Hulu,
anything
Netflix,
about
Amazon.
Bob Iger, Zaslav, all of those people are CEOs
of
who
streaming
make
companies
obscene amounts of money. Their salaries are easily researchable online. And essentially their contracts entail like an obscene amount of money. Just Bob Iger's salary could solve the entire writer's strike. I'm just going to put that out there. They're asking for 2% of the profits for what they are creating. 2%.
The writers, that is.
Yeah. So just putting that out there flat, the fault is entirely with those two groups. Without further ado. All right. So it's going to be kind of long.
But not by our standards.
Not by our standards, but I hope that you will bear with me to the end because this is super important.
Yeah, and if you don't give a shit and you just want to hear about the books, then you can skip this one.
But I beg you not to.
Yeah.
Okay. So essentially the strike boils down to several issues. The first is streamers and residuals. The last time that the SAG and the WGA struck together.
Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild of America.
Yeah. So SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, representing actors, and the WGA representing writers. Now, I think that something that people misunderstand, when they think of writers and actors, they're thinking of like the top echelon people, right? They're thinking of Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
Meryl Streep is not out there striking for Meryl Streep and Meryl Streep's money. Acting and writing, for the most part, are actually blue collar jobs. Now, that might sound ridiculous to you when you look up what writers make per thing, but to put it into perspective, I have written an episode of television for which I made $5,000. Now, that sounds like a lot, except you have to remember that was let's see, I got hired to start that job in October and I finished it in February.
Yeah.
So that's 5 months of work. I made $5,000. So that's basically what we're looking at here, like in terms of money that we're getting. So even though $5,000 sounds like a lot initially, it's not for the amount of work that gets put into an episode. All right. So the last time SAG and the WGA struck together was in 1960. To put that into perspective, Eisenhower was president, and the head of SAG was hilariously once union leader Ronald Reagan. All right. one of the things they won is this thing called residuals,
Yes.
which essentially boils down to studios continuously make money on the things that they put out.
Yes.
Right? So a TV show that gets watched on an airplane gives a certain amount of money to the studios for that. Anytime something gets played, the studios make money.
Yeah, whether it be a click on Netflix or a rerun on like TBS, somebody owns the rights to that, and they get paid for the fact that that thing was watched again.
Yes. So residuals were a way of writers and actors being like, hey, so since you are continuously making money on this, we also, as the people who made the thing, deserve to be continuously making money off of this. Okay? So those were a thing called residuals. So yeah, it essentially boils down to writers getting paid a small percentage every time someone watches something they wrote. Something to also understand is everything that a writer or actor makes, 10% of that goes immediately to managers, any managers that they might have. 10% of that also goes, an additional 10% of that also goes immediately to any agents they might have. And an additional 10% of that also goes to any lawyers they might have. All of those people they have in order to continue making their careers happen and in order to protect them from predatory practices and bad contracts.
Right.
Okay. So they're basically essential to a writer's career. All writers' wages are based around the idea that they have residuals that will come to them when the episode airs and continuously. It's kind of like how in America, a waiter's salary is based on the expectation of tips. So if you don't tip in America, you're an asshole. But when streaming came around, they claimed that writers did not have the right to residuals or to residuals in the amount that they should receive, because this isn't TV. This is the internet.
Right. So,
and that's different.
So the basis
they said.
of the deal that had been reached on residuals, which was, we made this thing and you're continuing to make money off of it, therefore we should too. They were told essentially, no, because this isn't television.
Yeah. And television also has this thing called ratings. And that is something that comes out and is public so that people can see, okay, this is how many people watch the show. And it's a metric of like, okay, so if this many people watch the show, these shows that have low ratings are probably going to get canceled. So there is like an accountability for like why things are getting canceled and why people are making the residuals that they're making. Streamers have all of this information, but they keep it internal because they claim that they don't have to release that information. So for example, somebody that I know is making 10 cents of residuals every time the episode is played.
Right. There was a guy on Twitter who wrote an episode of She-Hulk who shared that his residual for the episode of She-Hulk, a Marvel series that aired this year, he got like $400 in residuals.
That's it. For a Marvel show.
Yeah.
That's it. Acting and writing are working class jobs unless you get unbelievably lucky. And those unbelievably lucky people are not striking for us. Again, they are not striking for themselves. They are striking for the writers and actors who do not make the kind of money that they do and who are like really suffering right now because of it. Because just like in every other industry, the middle class is being absolutely hamstrung in Hollywood as well. So, yeah, so they keep all of those things internal. So they have the power to also just cancel shows out of nowhere, never say why, not give residuals because they can claim that the show was a loss. And if they never air it, they can write it off on their taxes as a loss.
A currently famous thing that this is happening with is the Batgirl movie, which was made. It, by all accounts, from people who saw it, was quite good. And was it Warner Brothers that made it? Decided, you know what? We're going to throw this in the trash and say that it's a tax write-off.
Because they realized they could make more money doing that than actually releasing the movie.
Right.
And that keeps happening. And the writers will not then get credit, or anybody that worked on it will not get credit for having worked on that movie.
Right.
Which we're going to talk about why credit is important in a minute. And then in addition to that, the reason why they're deleting shows on their platforms right now is in case we get the right to residuals, they don't want to have to pay them for existing things on their sites. So they're getting rid of them now proactively. But that means that the work that those people did is gone forever.
again, I think Willow is the case where like they canceled it and now, to my understanding, they're scrubbing it.
Yeah. And if
you can't see it anymore.
And if you want to hear why that's horrible, the Pink Ladies show, I can't remember what the name of it is up for a bunch of Emmys. You can't watch it anywhere. They deleted it. It's gone. So we can't see what work it did to earn those Emmy nominations. It's hysterical. It'd be hysterical if it weren't so gut-wrenchingly awful, because that art is gone forever. All right. So, streamers hamstrung writer salaries just as they were putting shows up that showcased minorities, homosexuals, and women to set themselves apart. So they basically screwed over minority writers and kept the salaries the same with no residuals. And to make it more fucked up, writers have to make a certain amount of money to maintain their healthcare provided for them by the WGA. And to put things into perspective, like, the entertainment career is unbelievably backwards. Writers didn't get the right to healthcare until 2017. I just want that to like sit with you for a minute. 2017. All right. Mini rooms. So when streamers started, they decided that they were going to do fewer episodes so they didn't have to spend money cutting shows, didn't have to spend money. So they're cutting shows down from 30 episodes to 8 to 10. So when they did that, they decided that meant that they didn't need as many writers to create a show, right? Because there's 30 episodes to 8 to 10. What's the problem there? You might ask, Allie, what's the problem with that? Well, let me tell you. It leads to the creation of this thing called mini rooms. That's fucked the writers in a couple ways. The first is financially. So writers also have their salaries determined by the idea that they'll get paid per episode that they write. But the fucked up thing is that mini rooms means that now, unlike in the past, writers are not guaranteed to write an episode of a show they're working on.
Yeah, to clarify here, what Allie is saying is that you might get hired to write for, pull a show out of my ass, Jane the Virgin. I'm not saying this happened on Jane the Virgin.
Yeah.
You might get paid X amount of money to be in the writer's room, to be a staff writer for that show. That salaried number will be lower than you might expect, because built into that is the expectation that you are also going to be credited as a writer of at least one episode of the show. And for each episode that you are credited as the writer for, you also get a script fee, additional money on top of the salary, and residuals.
And the salary is not that much, right? The salary is not that much, because they anticipate script fees and residuals. It's just like tips for waiters. The argument for keeping their wages low is that they'll make it up in tips. Well, now they've taken tips away and kept the salaries the same.
Right. By the way, if you're listening to this,
and we live in Los Angeles, one of the most expensive areas to live in.
If you're listening to this and thinking $5,000 is so much money, you know, as some such blue collar job, I make significantly less. That may be true. Bob Iger is making $22 million like a minute.
Yeah.
So,
and here's the thing. This is going to be one of the most public resistance, labor movements, right? We have Meryl Streep, right? The coal miners do not have Meryl Streep. There's no Meryl Streep of coal mining. I mean, there is, but like most of us, they're not a household name, right? So all eyes are going to be on this labor movement, and it will inevitably inform the future of all the labor movements that are like basically going to happen. Yeah. Because this is going to be the most public and powerful group. So if we fail, that says really bad things for teachers, for the pilots that are thinking about striking, for UPS, for hospitality workers, right? All of these people that are gearing up to strike need this strike to go well so that there are precedents. Anyway, so back to mini rooms. The fucked up thing is that mini rooms mean that now, unlike in the past, writers are not guaranteed to write an episode of a show they're working on, which means no credits and less money. It also means that the pipeline, I broke down what a writer's room looks like and the different levels some time ago. You can go find that episode.
I think it's the episode 8 preview thing from season 1.
But just like in any other job, right? Being a writer for a certain amount of time means you get a higher level and a higher salary. But that is predicated on you having written things before and having credits on shows before. If it is likely that you will not get a credit on a show that you are working on, you have no way to move upward in the entertainment industry. So there are people getting stuck at the same position for 15 years, stuck at the assistant level. Talented writers, contest winners are getting stuck at the assistant level for 15 years. And then the sick thing is then the assumption is that if you weren't able to work your way out of an assistant position or to a better writer position, that is because you're not talented enough. And that is simply not true.
This also leads to things like the showrunner shortage that we've mentioned before.
There's like 12 of them now. I might get to that in a minute.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Sorry, I wrote my magnum opus on this and I'm just reading off of it.
Sure.
So yeah, the writer has to write a certain number of episodes to move up to the next level of staff. Well, if you don't write an episode, you don't move up.
And if there are fewer episodes, you don't write an episode.
Which means if you liked all of the diversity and things, if you're a Warrior Nun fan, as an example, right? Hollywood's just going to stay old and white because no one who doesn't come from money and privilege can afford to stay in and try to rise or make their own thing so they get noticed. To make matters worse, a bunch of old white guys have decided that they don't need writers at all and will write all 8 episodes themselves and have no rooms because they're like, I'm an auteur.
Two very good shows that we would really like where this happened recently are The Last of Us and White Lotus. Mm-hmm. The Last of Us was written by Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. They did a great job. They did a great job. It's just them. White Lotus was just written by Mike White. Right? Mm-hmm. Again, he did a great fucking job. It's just him.
It's bad. And frankly, and if you're like, well, isn't that the right to do? The reason you do TV over a film is the collaboration aspect.
Yeah.
It is the fact that you want as many smart people in the room as possible from as many diverse perspectives as possible. Without it, you get the first season of White Lotus, which was good, but also super problematic at some points. And there's a lot of chatter on the internet as to why. And there was a lot of chatter on the internet after that, which is like, this is why one older white man in the room is not enough. It's not enough. Think of it as like someone being like, I'm going to do a startup and I'm going to be the only one who's working on it because I want all of the money and all the prestige.
Or for another example, you end up with huge prestige shows that run for 8 seasons, and then by the time you get to season 7 and 8 of the huge prestige fantasy show, the 2 auteur showrunners have decided they don't really care that much and they want to get to their next projects, and rather than handing it off to younger people and newer people,
the writer's room that they have,
they just sort of pack it up and close out the show as fast as they can.
Which is what happened
on
a particular show.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So, and also it's bad because studios will only greenlight things at this point with experienced showrunners attached.
Of which, again, there are not many.
There are like 12. There are not many. I mean, 12 is an exaggeration, but there are really not many. And so then you also get situations like with Rafe Judkins where he's show running like 2 shows at once, but it's like worse and worse. More and more people are running more and more shows. They're spread thin. They're not going to have the resources to focus on all of their shows the way that they need to. I'm not saying that Rafe Judkins can't do 2 shows. He knows what he can handle. But the more shows that get piled on these experienced showrunners' plates, the worse all quality TV is going to get.
Yeah.
And now, so they'll only greenlight things with showrunners attached. So it's going to be like the few people that have managed to make it to the top. And there's no one else coming up. So they're all going to eventually retire and there will be no one to replace them. But wait, Allie, you might ask, isn't it the studio's job to package talent? Why are writers having to come to studios with talent attached, with showrunners and actors attached? That leads me to the third thing. Studios are expecting writers to do their own development. Once upon a time, studios would pay writers for their development work, which was creating the pitch, writing the pilot. They'd work together to bring all the elements together
pilot
to make the
being
show.
The first episode.
Thank you. No longer, because they realize they can trick desperate writers into doing all of that work before they get any money or any guarantee of a yes. As we said before on this podcast, development can take anywhere from 3 to 5 years. And now writers are expected to bring a pitch deck, a pilot, and package the talent.
Pitch deck is essentially a very elaborate PowerPoint or Adobe Spark presentation that digests down the premise and theme of the show into something that a bunch of corporate guys can watch or read in half an hour.
Yeah.
Rather than parsing the media itself.
You used to get paid for that work. You used to get paid for making a pitch deck. You used to get paid for writing the pilot, right? And a pitch deck, by the way, I have been working on one for a month and a half, and it's not even close to done.
Yeah. Well, Allie,
and I have been working on it for 4 hours a day.
How many premises / projects have you had in development with or adjacent to or near a studio that didn't go anywhere?
Well, one of them 3 times.
Yeah.
One of them has been in different phases of development 3 times. None of that work was ever paid for. That's been over the course of 3 years.
Yeah.
At least one. I've had several that companies have liked and then said, come back when you've written the pilot, which is work I should be paid to do.
Yeah.
And I've had several that have gotten pretty far down the pipeline, and then they passed because I hadn't attached any. Are you just asking about my own?
Yes.
At least 2.
Yeah.
At least 2. And then when I was working as a creative executive, we had 30 projects, none of which we got paid to develop, right? But that was our job to do. But we would also foist a lot of that work on the actors.
Writers.
So we would grab as many projects as we could, right? But we wouldn't pay anybody for any of that. So if we just sat on it and did nothing with it, because by the way, when you have 30 projects, you just can't, as one person, you can't devote enough time to each of them to actually make them work. I tried my best, but everything was kind of like an inch at a time. And every time we would approach studios with them, they would go, come back when you have all of the talent. So then, Allie, you might be asking.
Can I say one other thing? Mm-hmm. It may be easy to respond to this and say, yeah, but you do it because you love it. You know, you're taking a risk on yourself. You're betting and hoping that it'll pay off. And that's all well and good. But much like any gambling, you need to have resources to gamble to an extent. So in the event that this sort of thing remains unremunerated, unpaid, and uncompensated, you end up with a situation where only people who come from affluence and only people who already have enormous well springs of resources can really afford to continue throwing spaghetti at this wall. Because if you don't pay for development, you got to be getting money somewhere. And as we've outlined, it takes a lot of time to develop these ideas.
So
it takes a lot of time. So if so
all of those diverse shows that you love and all of those, and here's the thing that people always seem to be doing on Twitter. They're like, well, shows suck now. It's all the same bullshit anyway. Like, we should be punishing the writers for that. Who do you think is making those decisions? Who do you think is coming to us and going, can we make Fast and the Furious 47? It's not us. Writers are not out of ideas. We have 1,000 ideas a person, and there's thousands of us. But no one will let us do those projects because of the algorithms. So they are only interested in getting your money as quickly and easily as they can. And it's not going to be good if the focus is solely money. I mean, and if you don't believe me, has it been working out so far? If you're criticizing writers for things not being good anymore, look away from the writers. Look at the executives that are greenlighting the shows. It is their responsibility. What moves forward?
I'm still not over the fact that they released Morbius twice.
I mean, if there's any evidence...
Not that Morbius isn't necessary,
If there's any evidence that they are out of touch...
Yeah,
the internet memed
them into releasing Morbius twice.
Yeah, believe me, writers did not make that decision. So hold on one second. Let me get back on track. So yeah, in development, they're asking writers to essentially be unpaid for 3 to 5 years to never. And we know there are only a couple of showrunners in Hollywood who Hollywood will ultimately use, and they don't want to do any projects but their own, right? They don't want to like uplift other people's projects. They're too busy trying to get their own projects made. So nothing new can come up unless it's IP that already exists or you're incredibly lucky. And even with the IP, the writer has to have bought the rights to that project themselves without any guarantee that it'll get made when they already don't have any money. And any of the creators that do magically get through to make their own thing are often first timers whose daddy bought them some IP or POC people or women or something who they prop up for a second, who are not prepared for the responsibility because of the problems listed above, because they haven't been able to work their way up. They've just been looked at and gone, okay, cool, do this project. And then when they succeed, amazing. But if they inevitably fail, which they might, because imagine you go from zero to running a startup, right? Go from college to running a startup. I mean, some people will make it, but 9 times out of 10, they're not going to succeed. They're not prepared for the responsibility because of the problems listed above. And then they're used as a scapegoat for why the studios need to use the old guard over and over and don't need to elevate new talent to showrunner. But Allie, you might ask, if writers have to do all of that, what exactly is the studio's job? And why do they get such a gigantic portion of the money when they basically did nothing to create a project? All they're doing is hosting it on the internet. That's a really good fucking question. And that's the question we're asking. What is it that you do then if writers are expected to do everything and if actors are expected to do everything? We're going to get to why SAG is important in a second. So this is why the strike is so important. This is likely going to be an indicator, like I've said before, for how all of the inevitable strikes across every industry will go. And I'll get into a little bit more of that in a second. But we have Meryl Streep, so we're the ones who really have to hold out. This is for all labor's future, not just ours. The situation is so bad that one writer I know was in development with Netflix, and had to steal from the Netflix cafeteria so that he could feed his family. And that was happening over the course of, I believe, 2 years. So for 2 years, this person had to steal food from Netflix to feed his family. That's how bad it is. Okay, so point number 4, we're at AI, which is a big one.
Part of it right now.
These execs are always looking for the magic beans that is going to guarantee them success. Right now, it's the algorithm, right? The algorithm is what's making the decisions. Ironically, frankly, it's ironic that executives are like, oh, we can replace writers when it's a much easier job to replace executives because all they do is go, well, this is what the algorithm thinks will be successful. Frankly, I didn't say that because I was one.
Yeah.
But they're always looking for the magic beans. So if you're upset with how TV and film, if you're upset with the random cancellations or the fact that things seem to not go past season 1, if you're upset with all of this stuff, you know who to blame now. Right? The people that are looking for the magic beans, the algorithm, whatever it was before that. And now it's going to be AI in their minds. That's going to make it so that they can guarantee they're going to make money hand over fist. But you can't quantify art and the human psyche like that.
Right.
You can't actually, what we have learned is that if anything, is that you actually cannot predict what is and what isn't going to be successful in art. You just cannot do it. You can kind of do some reasonable ideas, right? Marvel movie's probably going to do well. And that's why they keep beating that drum over and over again.
Yeah. Big successful franchise has made money, probably will make money.
And that's why that's all that's being released.
Yeah. By the way, specifically what the studios want to do with AI probably is get AI to generate premises and outlines and draft scripts, and then essentially hire one writer to polish that into something that sounds human.
And then it becomes, in their minds, unskilled labor and an excuse to pay us even less.
Right.
But that's the reason. This is the thing. They're going to have to hire human beings to fix it. Right. And by the way, every writer that I know has no problem coming up with ideas. They've got millions of incredible ideas, right? They're not being moved forward because of how the industry is working. And frankly, like all of us would rather stick a gun in our mouths, and I'm not exaggerating, than freaking ask AI for ideas. It's the equivalent of going to like a family barbecue and having your weird uncle talk to you about their movie idea. Because believe me, every fucking weird family barbecue that you ever go to for the rest of your life, every party, everything that you ever do for the rest of your fucking life, someone is going to come to you and be like, I have a screenplay idea and I want you to write it for me. So they're like, oh, you make my dream for me. So AI can replicate what has come before, but it cannot innovate like the human mind can. And one of the big problems that is happening is they are feeding our scripts without our consent, likely, to train AI.
Right. And you can get into the debate about where AI can go in the future. That's neither here nor there, really.
Well, it is actually because...
Oh, okay, sorry.
Because we all have to start getting nervous about the fact that all of us, if they can replace writers, one of, in my mind, the most difficult jobs for AI to do, believe me, we asked ChatGPT and ChatGPT said it'd be much easier for them to be a CEO than a writer. You are all replaceable. And frankly, I did not sign up for a future where human beings potentially are given drudgery to do while the AI gets to like paint and make art and write and make poetry. What kind of fucking future is that? We are evolving in the fucking wrong direction. You think movies and TV are shit now? Those of you who are complaining about writers and thinking we should be punished for the way that the industry has fucked us over. If you think things are shit now with all the reruns and safe bets, that's not writers doing that. That's the execs who want as much of your money as possible. What the fuck makes you think it'll be better with AI? It's going to be 100 times worse. And listen, very well may come a time that AI can do everything a human can. And we should fear that day and do everything we can to resist it and make sure that human beings are protected. Because once that happens, it's just no longer beneficial for any of us to be around. And without universal basic income, there's a very real chance that they will let everyone non-essential starve to death. That's a potential outcome. So if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that the powerful do not care about us. And even if I'm being reactionary and hyperbolic and you want to turn me off right now, why would any of us want to live in this world where we're sending emails from a windowless office with the robots getting to do all the fun stuff about being alive? I have sat down at family dinners and listened to all of them say what they would rather be doing with their lives. I'm the only one who is like, I would be doing nothing else if I had like unlimited money and stuff. And you know what all of them wanted to do was make things. Play the piano, become a fashion designer. It was devastating to listen to. And you might like your job.
It was cool.
Great. Protect it. Support the WGA because we are doing this for you too. Support SAG.
Yeah.
We are letting them evolve us the wrong way. Yeah. I said that. So
do you want to talk about SAG and AI?
I'm almost there.
Okay.
Because this AI shit is coming for the jobs of essentially the entire economy of Los Angeles. So here's where actors fit in. And I'm sorry this is long, but I vehemently hope you all listen to this because we're really fighting right now. So all of this that I've talked about has also impacted actors, residuals, all of it. Most actors are working class people who have a line or two in a couple episodes, maybe a featured role, maybe a co-star from time to time. That's great. But they're not usually going to be the lead, right? The leads are going to go to the safe bets because the powers that be do not want to make any kind of gambles that are not going to give us the money that they so crave, right? So most of those people that you see that come in and they're like a nurse in an episode, they're working class people, just like you. They just have a dream and they're pursuing that dream just like you. And it might seem a little bit more glamorous, but I promise you, oftentimes it's like feeling like you're in a cattle call. And just like with writers, streamers give them no residuals or very little. And they have been asked to, in contracts, to sell the rights to their likeness in perpetuity.
And voice. That meaning, essentially, if you are an actor who does voiceover, this is a specific thing that has been happening to people. They might say, hey, we're going to train an AI on your voice so that then we can use your voice for audiobooks. We can use your voice for a voiceover in a show. We won't need you because we've bought your voice. And we've bought your likeness.
And, you know, if you are somebody who, like us, is obviously left-leaning, Imagine that your voice or face can be used without your permission for a Mitch McConnell campaign. Right now, it can't, but they're asking actors to sign all of that away. And that's forever, not just until they die, forever. And if you think about what that means with AI, it should chill your fucking blood. And if you think they can't do that, they already are. In a recent film, they used the likeness of a dead celebrity without the permission of his family, had him acting and everything. They're already doing it. People who are already dead aren't safe from this.
And by the way, if you're listening to this thinking, well, you know what? That's the way it's going to be and we're going to have to deal and that's just the way forward. Is that the world you want to live in?
Yeah.
If that is the way that things are evolving and if it is like, well, it's an inevitability that technology will be able to do this. Have you seen Jurassic Park?
You're basically being like the climate change deniers of this issue.
It's essentially...
Your despondency is just as harmful.
It is as if to say, yeah, maybe that is an inevitability that it's possible. So now is the time to say whether or not it is permissible.
And guess who has the power to say that? We do. We outnumber them. We do. They're terrified of us. And they should be.
Yes, notably, the other day there was an article released in Deadline, one of the Los Angeles Hollywood trade publications, where the AMPTP executives, an unnamed source, said that their plan for the writers' strike is to wait until writers start losing their homes and apartments from lack of money and then force them back to the negotiating table. Yeah, you can do that as business people. It is scummy and evil and sickening.
Yeah. And
yes, you can do that.
And
yes,
if you think that that is okay to say, I implore you, if you have children, to just imagine somebody saying that about your home right now. They want your kids on the street. That's it. That's the feelings that they have for us, the people that have given them, that have propped them up and given them the money that they have. And I, frankly, am so devastated by the fact that the best case scenario for us is that we go back in and work with these people who now we know care so little for us.
Yeah.
That's the best case scenario, is that we get back to work with these people. So, all right. So a bit ago, the actors had written a letter that 2,000 actors signed in a single day, urging SAG to not negotiate. 97% of the WGA and 98% of SAG members authorized their strikes
of those
in a
who
vote.
Voted.
Of those who voted.
Yes.
But I just want to tell you, do you know how hard it is to get writers and actors as groups to agree 97% on everything?
Anything.
Like, have you ever tried to take an order for lunch from a room full of writers? They honestly, they can't even agree on whether slug lines, which is like the headings of scenes, should be bolded or underlined. There has been like brawls on Twitter over it. Oxford comma, don't even mention it. But that's how scary things have gotten. It has united people that much. And it's not going to stop with us. And just trust me on that. We are a test group for what is coming. They are starting with the most powerful people, because while I respect all of your professions, again, none of you have Meryl Streep. None of you. So they published that dumpster fire supervillain article that Gus mentioned the day before the strike, SAG called the strike, to intimidate SAG into a deal. And then they brought in also a federal negotiator provided by Ari Emanuel and some other guy whose name is escaping me right now, in order to try and push SAG into extending the negotiation deadline a second time, because they'd already done it once out of like an attempt at a good faith deal. By the way, if you want to hear what their attempts at a good faith deal were for us, first of all, the reason that we're striking is because the AMPTP were the ones who walked away from the negotiating table and refused to play ball. And when they did, they never offered a compromise to any of our things. They just struck them down. And one of the few compromises were, we'll have a once a year meeting to discuss writers' concerns.
About AI specifically.
About AI. That's all we'll do for AI. Yeah, fuck off. All right. So SAG responded to all of this with a scathing letter telling them essentially, you have had a long time to negotiate in good faith. You have chosen to break our trust instead. You have 24 hours, even with the federal negotiator, which was big, bad fucking ass.
Incidentally, the 24-hour thing was because SAG, their deadline was set to expire 2 weeks ago. The deal was going to expire. So the existing contract between the Screen Actors Guild and the AMPTP was set to expire 2 weeks ago. SAG agreed to extend that deadline 2 weeks for further negotiation. 24 hours before that expiration, AMPTP was like, come on, let's bring in a federal negotiator because you won't do what we want, essentially. And SAG said, fine, we understand you're trying to bring in a federal negotiator in no small part to kind of pressure us into extending the deadline again. We're not doing it. So you have 24 hours from now to get this discussion done. That ended last night, midnight between July 12th and 13th.
Yeah. But one of the horrific things is that the Emmy noms came like in this weird, like dystopian addition to the whole thing, where it was like the studios were celebrating their Emmy nominations while oppressing the people that made it so that those shows existed in the first place. Make it make sense. Because again, what the fuck do execs do if they're expecting all the work to be done by everyone else? And also the article accomplished that the studios like did an anonymous source in only just pissed everybody off more and galvanized them more because they said the quiet part out loud. Because we all knew that's what they were doing. But now we have indefatigable proof. Actors were out there with us yesterday with signs that said practicing. And if you want to know, like, oh, picketing, like how much of a big deal is it? Well, several writers have had people try to run them over while picketing. Several. And also why picketing is so important is that because Teamsters, the crew union, was standing in solidarity with the writers. If there were picketers at the entrances to studios, then they would turn around and not go in, which shut down tons of productions. SAG striking just ensured that every production in the U.S. that isn't reality will be shut down. And even with reality, they're fucked because most hosts are SAG. Animation is also now down because of voice actors. So because animation writers are a different union and their contracts are not up for negotiation until next year. And they can't strike now, but they're standing in solidarity. But they're at a pause as well. So Hollywood and LA as a whole effectively just shut down. Two unions just completely halted LA's economy. So that's got to show you at this point the power of unions and people standing together in solidarity against being replaced. And that's what you missed on Glee.
So, Allie, how does this affect the Wheel of Time?
It will, because many of the actors on that show are SAG. They will not be able to perform. They will not be able to do promotion. That is a bummer. And I won't deny that that's a bummer.
Yeah, we're at WoTCon now. We realized that we got all excited about talking about the strike and didn't really talk that much about specifically
how it's going to affect.
How it may or may not affect Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
It's really kind of complicated. It may or may not, depending on what specific contracts the Wheel of Time show is covered by. It might shut down production for a while. It also might not. We don't know, because that would require inside knowledge of the contract.
Every single actor's contract.
Yeah.
I will say that there is an American actor on that set, so at least one.
Yeah. And I know Equity UK has a thing about, with Equity UK being one of the unions that is possible they're working through, that they have a thing about American actors being able to complete their existing contracts but not take new ones. Is kind of a thing through SAG. So that's possible that is what some of those guys have going on. It's also possible that that's not what's happening. When we get into international labor law, we're the wrong people to ask.
I don't have a law degree, so. Yeah. But I mean, I think
the long and the short of it is, if it does or does not affect the show itself, what matters here is that these strikes
need to happen.
They
need to happen.
Yeah.
So what we ask very politely is that when you have feelings of disappointment,
right,
or feelings of anger or feelings of sadness, that rather than go, because of the strikes, no.
Right.
No. The strikes are not, the people who are striking are not the people that you are directing your feelings toward. Even if you're expressing feelings of solidarity in those messages, what telegraphs to us and to everyone else in the world is that
if only there wasn't a strike.
Yes.
Right?
And there has to be one. Yeah. So the people you are angry with.
So we get it, but like the people that are to blame here are the studios.
Yes. The studios are to blame.
Who since recording that earlier thing.
Specifically, because we're not mad at the, entry-level executives who don't have any power in the situation. Specifically, we're angry at the billionaire CEOs in charge of the studios who, I mean, Bob Iger today, his salary is enough to stop the strike from happening. So.
Yeah. So that's that. We're going to go to sleep. I'm going to try
It's 2 a.m. at Walk
I'm going to try to rip this thing together tomorrow morning. Hopefully this comes out Friday. Don't worry, it's probably not going to be the only episode if I have time to edit a regular episode tomorrow, which I hope I do. Thanks, everybody. All right, in true us fashion, we don't know when to shut the fuck up.
We forgot about one more thing.
We've got to talk about promotional stuff. That's something
that's gonna stop.
That's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Specifically, doesn't mean there's not gonna be a trailer.
The trailer's already done. The trailer's done. Stop panicking. Oh my God, we scared them.
It doesn't mean that they're not going to be able to air the press junket stuff. It doesn't mean anything. It means that they recorded the press junket stuff early because they thought this was going to happen.
I mean, we've known that this is going to happen for months.
Yeah.
So if anything is unprepared, on the studio's behalf, that's like really on them.
Yeah. And the studios didn't think SAG was going to strike, but
this past week, they
kind of realized it. But as relates to season 2 of The Wheel of Time, because it's airing in 50 days, they probably pre-recorded most of their interviews and stuff that they were going to use for run-up. If the strike is still going when premiere day comes, it is very, very likely that no actors will be able to do a red carpet event. Yes. Mm-hmm. For instance, today the cast of Oppenheimer walked out of the premiere because there is a strike on.
Yep.
They cannot be there. And this is not a question
also,
of...
it was cold.
Yeah, it was. This sort of thing is not a question of like, but couldn't they just go for the one thing? No, they really fucking can't.
No.
It's really like an all or nothing. This extends out to things like podcast appearances. If our podcast were invited to become a partnered Amazon Wheel of Time podcast, or if they had a formal Wheel of Time promotional podcast and then invited us to come talk about it, to talk about the show on it, neither of us would be able to join SAG.
Yeah.
Ever.
If they ask us to host again...
we can't.
And we're still striking, we can't.
Yeah, we can't do it. So like if they do premiere stuff and they say, come host a premiere in Chicago, if we did that, we'd be blacklisted from ever joining SAG. So, we're not going to do that.
So, just know that any acting or promotion that you do for a struck company means that you are scabbing SAG and means you are ineligible from ever joining.
To be clear, this doesn't mean if you tweet, I'm excited about the Wheel of Time. It doesn't mean if you retweet.
No, you are not a struck company.
That's a different, no. What that means is if you partner with Amazon Studios or Sony specifically to promote the show in a performative capability, to my understanding, and I will link the document where this is outlined, to my understanding, that would blacklist you from joining the Screen Actors Guild.
Forever.
So don't do that if you care about that. And also just don't.
Do it.
Because
that's never know what twists and turns your life might take.
Yeah.
We might be on this earth 90 years, 100 years. Who knows how long people will live.
Yeah.
You don't know when you might want to do SAG after shit, and you can't.
This is also why you're probably not going to see the cast tweeting about the show.
Definitely.
They can't.
Yeah.
To my understanding, it's possible that individual people's contracts are different. Individual people are there's going to be exceptions to what we're saying.
Yeah, they're still working out all the stuff. We don't know all
of this stuff, but generally speaking, you can't. Specifically, the actors, SAG actors, and people who have any desire to be SAG actors and the actors on the show are probably not going to be able to do active promotion.
Yeah.
Now, don't worry about the show not getting adequate promotion that way.
No, Amazon has been preparing for this.
Amazon in particular is going to be able to jam this fucking thing up your ass if they want to.
So I'm sorry, it's 2:30 in the morning and I'm exhausted.
No, I love it.
And it's been a long day of
Do
reading
you want
Twitter.
a Wheel of Time enema? You will have one. Don't
if
worry
that's what
about it.
Amazon wants, that's what they're going to get.
That's not what we need to be worrying about right now.
Yeah.
This is a good thing. Yay! Solidarity, unions.
Strikes suck. Yes,
This is
they're
what
supposed
America
to be
was
disruptive,
built on.
but this is a good thing. So, this needs to happen.
It needs to happen.
Yeah.
It's meant to be disruptive.
In case you missed
Sorry if it bummed you out.
In case you missed it, today, part of the deal that was revealed was that the AMPTP was proposing that anybody who did background acting be paid for 1 day of work and then have their likeness scanned in and their voice captured and copied so that they could then be used as a digital actor forever.
And and that will not stop. No. By the way, if we capitulate on that, that will not stop at background actors.
Eventually it becomes any actor must sign this contract. We own your vision. We own you now.
And then guess what? There are no actors
anymore. And then
anymore.
They don't need to hire actors anymore. So
they will just own people.
People. We can get back and forth about the good possibilities behind the technology behind AI, but this ain't it.
Here's the thing. There are going to be amazing ways in which we can use AI as a tool.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I'm 100%. Not denying that there are going to be, that it is inevitable that we will have AI. What the question is now is, how are we going to use it?
Right. And are we going to pave the path from day one for replace all the creatives?
Replace all people
because it's
eventually.
Cheaper. Or are we going to use this as a supplemental thing in other ways? And I don't know how that's going to be. I'm not trying to talk about it. I'm not an AI expert.
But we need to have people who are smarter than all of us creating laws around it before it becomes a problem, not after.
So anyway, second addendum. This is going to be like an hour long now.
We love you.
We love you all.
And thank you for everyone who's voiced their support.
Yes, thank you to everyone who's voiced their support. Long and the short of it is the show, if it affects it or it doesn't, in the long run, this is for the best. I understand concern. I sympathize with concern. I do. But this has to happen, and this is for the best. And the only people who are to blame for this are the studios.
If that makes you disappointed, if that makes you sad, if that makes you angry, I urge you very strongly to not go, I support the SAG and WGA, but how about instead, I'm disappointed in this, but this is the right thing to do for SAG. And I'm going to direct all of my anger at the AMPTP and the studios. I am going to do a couple things that you can do to help us, right? You at home, my least favorite thing is feeling helpless. There are things that you can do to help us. If you are a business, you can offer discounts to card-carrying SAG and WGA members. You could provide us lunch on the picket lines. You can picket with us in any city that there is picketing happening. You are very welcome to join the lines. People will be very happy to see you. They'll be very friendly to you. If they aren't, tell me and tell me what their name is. Yeah, you can talk to other people who have incorrect opinions about the WGA and
rather
SAG
misinformed.
Stuff. Misinformed. Incorrect. But I'm just kidding. You can point them to this episode, or better yet, the strike captains that are doing a lot of great work on Twitter to raise awareness and who have the most accurate information. If you are worried at all about like something you're doing, maybe being scabbing, maybe making lives worse, the WGA and SAG phones are open and people are waiting for your call. And they will help you walk through how to navigate this. Also, in addition to that, you can also make it so creatives can afford to feed themselves by donating to the Entertainment Community Fund. The link to that we will put on our Twitter, and it will also be on the SAG website. And there are also more resources for you to get involved on the SAG website. We really appreciate all of you who have listened this far.
Yeah.
You're not people I'm mad at. But I am mad right now. I haven't slept in 2 days. If anything I said was inaccurate, it's probably because I haven't slept in 2 days. I really, really appreciate, and Gus really appreciates, the people who have reached out to us and supported us during this time. While we really vehemently believe that all of this needs to be happening, it is a scary time for us and for all of the people in the entertainment industry. We don't know what's coming, but we know we have to win.
Mm-hmm.
And not just for us, for the future of entertainment and, for the future of labor movements. So,
and again, the strike is not to benefit Meryl Streep, Mark Ruffalo, I don't know, Tom Cruise if he goes out there, Margot Robbie if she goes out there. Yeah, we know they're fine. We know they're the ones making money hand over fist along with the execs. They're striking for people like me and Allie who would like this to be the main thing we do someday. They're striking for the people in my acting class. They're striking for the people who are paycheck to paycheck on guest star roles if they're lucky and are supporting that with wait staff and with service industry jobs, being a doorman. They're striking for the audiobook narrators.
Yeah.
They're striking for the people who do the odd voiceover gig.
Yeah, they're striking for that random actor on that random, not as talked about show that you really like.
Yeah, they're striking for that guy who had one really funny line.
Yeah.
And then he had to quit acting because that was the job he had. He couldn't get another one, and he needed to have, a steady career.
Yeah. And capitalism is a monster to all of us. So, yeah, we hope that you support us. All of the folks in the entertainment industry are really appreciating any support that is shown them. Even if it's just sending a tweet that says, hey, it's really fucked up what's going on and I support the WGA and SAG. That's honestly, even that is enough. So thank you very much for spending your day with us.
We didn't think this was going to be an hour.
We did not.
Yeah,
we have to go catch our flight to JordanCon. We really have to go. We have to catch our flight to WoTCon. We look forward to potentially seeing some of you there. And if you have more questions or comments or concerns, I'm happy to try to answer them to the best of my ability, or I can try and reach out to some people who actually do know better than I. But thank you for listening, and we love you.